America is a tale of two cities. One, the majority. One, the minority. The last 3 months exposed these parallel Americas. In one America, people rage for the freedom to get a haircut and a tattoo. The other is raging just to be seen and heard. Not just this video. It's the prosecutions that don't happen, the cases that aren't on video that you don't see, and the prosecutions that do happen of the wrong people, the punishments that are too harsh for the crimes minorities commit. It's the laws that make it harder to vote and easier to be out of a job, but it's still going to be your problem. You know why? Only the majority can fix it. The minority doesn't have the power. The pandemic will pass. The case will fade into the others, but our real problems remain. They'll only go away when we finally realize that minority and majority must come together, or America will never be her best.
Obviously, that was not the typical opening to a free-range musician video. But it was necessary for you to watch, because Sophie and I have a platform that should be used to talk and tell about the lives of Black people in America and what we have to deal with on a daily basis in this country. I want to tell a story, my story, of what it's been like for me growing up, being a Black tuba player in classical music. At the end of 7th grade, I joined the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra's Talent Development Program. The Talent Development Program has served talented young musicians in the entire field of classical music by providing the highest level of musical training to hundreds of African American and Latino students. Nearly 100 fellows have graduated from the program and gone on to attend top music schools. When I was accepted as a new fellow, I was required to attend the Talent Development Program's spring recital. Now, this was the first time I'd seen this many high-level Black classical musicians in one place, and to this day, honestly, it's the only place I've seen it. And there was only 25 musicians in total. But by 12 years old, I already knew I wanted to be a professional musician, and seeing this recital gave me the assurance that I could do it by looking on stage and seeing it be done. So I was curious, and I looked up to find that less than 2% of musicians in American orchestras are African American, according to a 2014 study by the League of American Orchestras, and only 4.3% of conductors are Black, and the composers remain predominantly white as well. It was in the Talent Development Program that I learned of the racial discrepancies in classical music that I never really noticed growing up. Every single competition, every single summer music festival, every high-level ensemble I played in through high school, and really to now, I could count the number of Black people in the orchestra on my hand, and most of the time I was the only one, so really not much counting when I think back to it. But one of the worst days I had was the day of the murder of Philando Castile on July 6, 2016. Philando was shot dead by police while reaching for his wallet with his girlfriend and daughter in the car. And the worst thing about the video was the daughter, the 4-year-old daughter, was the one trying to calm the mother down that her father had just been shot. I watched this video while in class, and I picked my head up, and I looked around and I saw nobody that looked like me, not the teacher, not my classmates, and I was furious, and I stormed out of the classroom straight to my suite, and I punched the wall. I was so angry. But then that anger turned into sadness. What was I to do? I called my parents and they helped calm me down. I was extremely upset, but I did what I always did. I got back in the practice room and I played my butt off until I couldn't anymore. Just fell asleep, just hoping that someday something like this would never happen to me. But then something did, in the same city. I was walking back from doing laundry up that long, treacherous hill, and I got firecrackers thrown at me from people in an old beaten up car with Confederate flags just waving. They If you're from the South, you know exactly what that picture looks like. I was all alone and I kept walking. I was so upset. I didn't tell anybody about it until just now. I say this story to say, don't feel sorry for me. Don't feel sorry for Black people as a whole. Just understand that stories and things like this are possibilities of things that we have to deal with on a daily basis in this country. And that's just my reality. And that's just a glimpse into it.
As for my experience in classical music, I've always been surrounded by people who look like me, whether it be orchestral rehearsals, concerts, camps, and festivals. Very rarely have I gone to an event that has broken outside of that demographic. And then when I was at school, I learned about MLK, Malcolm X, the Little Rock Nine, Jim Crow. But it wasn't until my junior year that I started getting into systemic racism more in depth, and I did independent research on mass incarceration. So until then, I had just learned the very basics in school, and I didn't understand how deep this problem was and the extent to which it lasted to today. That was when I really identified mass incarceration and systemic racism as issues that I cared about. But still, I didn't understand that I myself had to take steps towards that to get anything to happen. I didn't realize that just supporting Black Lives Matter, in my head and in my heart, wasn't enough. I just realized recently, in light of current events, that it's not in the hands of a few activists, and it's not just in the hands of the Black community. We need to take it upon ourselves to get as much of an education as we can. We need to talk to other people about it who don't know much about it. And then we need to go out into the community. We need to vote in local elections as well as the presidential election and think about who we're voting for, because that's where it really matters with law enforcement. And then we also need to go out and protest. So these are things where you can have a really active hand in what's happening in the world around you.
It's not about not being racist. It's about being able to understand each other past the racism and understanding the education needed to be able to understand why protests are happening, why there's rioting, why we are so upset.
This has been a very long fight, and what we want to get across today is that it's not a fight that just the Black community should be participating in. It should be everyone. And we're going to tell you today what you can do as allies to help in this fight. Because ultimately, we need to make progress together, and that's the only way we can approach this. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about today is listening. One of the best things you can do is just lend an ear to someone who is telling about their experiences. Just like today, how Errol described things that have happened to him and his experience, just a very small part of it.
Yes, and listening doesn't necessarily mean going to ask your Black friend, hey, tell me your experience, hey, tell me what it's like. It just means if you see it, just shut up and listen. You don't have to comment on it either. You really don't.
Yeah.
And, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And this is where the educate yourself part comes in, too. When you go out and you actively look for things to listen to, just do that. Just listen.
We want to talk a little bit about a conversation that Errol and I had yesterday, because I knew that Errol was going through something that I couldn't understand. Even if I see what's going on, and even if I'm concerned about it and it pervades my thoughts, it's not going to be the same level that Errol has to experience. I asked him if he wanted to share his story today, and it led to a long conversation about his experience as a Black man trying to make his way in music. We both left feeling a lot better about everything that's happening because I was able to learn from him and just listen.
So the second thing we want to talk about was research. So when we say educate yourself, we literally mean go out and find things that talk about this topic of black people in America and the things we have to deal with. Try to look up and use keywords that will get you to learn information that you didn't learn in the classroom. Okay? There's more to Martin Luther King than just peaceful marches and getting things signed. There was more to Malcolm X than Black Power. Okay? Listen to their speeches. Read their books. Read their letters. Really understand what people were trying to say. Educate yourself on what writers have written about them, positive or negative, why they are right and why they may be wrong. There's tons of information out there, and we'll gladly provide some for you.
You might be wondering, once you have this information, what can you do with it? And that brings us to the third step to being an ally, and that is passing it on. So pass this information on to people you know. If someone says something that's even remotely racist or goes against some fact that you have learned, you need to speak out because it's important for them to learn that, even if it has to be from you instead of research that they're doing.
Right, and and the reason to share is so important is, for me, a black man, I know, just like black families have conversation about race and politics and things that go on in this country, we know white families do the exact same. And for me, I don't necessarily have the privilege or to go out and talk to racist people because I don't have racist people in my family. Yeah. But if you do have some people in your family, if you do have friends, if you do have colleagues that say hurtful and wrong things, if you stay silent about it, you're a part of the problem. And that might have been hard to hear, but silence is choosing to be on the side of the oppressor. So please, speak up, educate, and talk about it. Because that is one of the first, not the only way, but is one of the biggest ways that you can continue to end the fight of racism in this country.
So we must all work together on this, and I hope that you guys leave this video with some new perspective on what you can do. you.